Welcome to this explainer. Right off the bat, we're diving straight into that weird, uncomfortable space between who you are right now and who you know deep down you could be. And we're going to do this by looking closely at the story of someone named Rhea. You can think of this as your personal guide to the compassionate recovery of your lost potential. So if you've ever felt like you're just sort of standing on the sidelines of your own life, trust me, you are in exactly the right place.
All right, let's just acknowledge the elephant in the room. The very real ache of living two different lives at the exact same time. On one hand, you have your actual, everyday reality. You know the one, snoozing the alarm, skipping breakfast, losing entire hours to your phone, and carrying around this vague sense of guilt you've probably just learned to ignore. But then, on the other hand, there's that 3-minute pre-sleep life, that idealized version of yourself you visit right before you drift off. In that life, man, you are focused, you're moving, you're actually getting that postponed work done, and the person looking back at you from the mirror has this incredible spark in their eye that you might not even recognize when you're awake.
Here is the crucial takeaway right up front. That 2 a.m. pre-sleep vision, it's not a delusion. It's really not just wishful thinking. It is a signal. It's actually the most sophisticated internal navigation system you have, and it's been trying to guide you for years. The only problem is that you've just turned the volume all the way down. Well, today we are turning it back up.
Section 1. The Parable of Rhea, the Faded Vision Board. Let me introduce you to 22-year-old Rhea. Now, looking at her from the outside, she's not failing. Nobody around her sees her struggling at all. But internally, she's carrying this heavy, quiet shame of a dream that she just constantly postpones. Let's rewind a few years. When Rhea was 18, she built this vision board with absolute physical certainty. She spent hours cutting out images from magazines. We're talking beautiful design studios, soaring city skylines, powerful women speaking on stages. She pinned them right above her desk, believing with every single fiber of her being that this was her future.
She even framed the whole thing with fairy lights. Sitting there in her room, she was totally surrounded by the electric excitement and literal illumination of her own boundless potential. It felt real. It felt like her success had already happened, and she was just waiting for time to catch up to it.
She anchored this board with these incredibly powerful words: free, creating, mine. But fast forward 4 years, that exact same vision board is still hanging on her wall. Except now it's totally faded from the sunlight. Half the pins are missing, the magazine edges are all curling up. And Rhea? She's completely stopped looking at it. Not because her dream died, mind you, but because looking at those sun-faded edges now just evokes this paralyzing sense of defeat. She basically spent 4 years preparing to deliver a dream, and somehow she never actually began.
Now check out the specific, completely false story she was telling herself to justify delaying her life. She'd say, "I'll start the design course after exams," or "I'll build the portfolio over the summer." And then, the ultimate trap: "I'll take the first step when I feel ready." She fundamentally mistook a temporary lack of readiness for a permanent stop sign. So there she is, sitting in the quiet of her hostel room, and that heavy internal shame she'd been carrying finally catches up to her as an actual, physical sensation of stagnation. Staring right at the physical manifestation of her own inaction, she finally forced herself to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. What exactly am I waiting for? The silence in that room delivered the most brutally honest answer of her entire university life. It didn't say, "Oh, you're just waiting for the right time." The silence said, "Nothing." She was standing at the door of her own life, waiting for absolutely nothing. She had stood there for so long, she actually convinced herself the door was locked from the outside. But it wasn't. It literally never was. It was an unlocked door the whole time.
Section 2. The Psychological Gap, Shifting the Mirror to You.
Because Rhea's story is your story. It's the story of every thoughtful, sensitive person trapped by perfectionism. So let's clear the air right off the bat. Look at this list. The enemy holding you back is absolutely not laziness. You are not lazy. A truly lazy person does not lie awake at 2 a.m. feeling the physical ache of their own unfinished potential. That ache proves you care enormously. You just haven't figured out how to channel it yet. It's also not a lack of talent. History is packed with ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and it's sure not bad luck. So if it isn't any of these external factors, what is it?
It's this: the gap. Simply put, this is the psychological space between who you believe you are right now and who you would need to be to live your dream life. And here's the big secret. This massive space is maintained not by external reality, but entirely by a fearful internal narrative. It's a story you've repeated to yourself so many times that it feels like an absolute undeniable truth.
Because here is the wildest trick your brain plays on you. Your brain literally cannot distinguish between a long-held fearful story, like "I'm not the type of person who succeeds," or "I'll try when I'm ready," or "This is totally unrealistic," and an actual objective fact about the real world. To your brain, both feel equally real, and both shape your behavior equally. You are effectively blocking your own dream with your own narrative. You're mistaking your fear, which is just disguised as pragmatism, for an immovable brick wall. Your dream isn't blocked by the world, it's blocked by the story you're carrying.
But here is the absolute best part of all this. Unlike the physical world, your internal story is something you can change. The compassionate recovery of your lost potential starts right here, today, with these 3 steps. First, just allow yourself to feel the immense relief of letting go of the paralyzing need for perfection. You really don't have to be flawless to begin. Second, stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a complete myth designed to keep you safe, comfortable, and completely stagnant. And third, start treating that genuine ambition, that 2 a.m. pre-sleep vision, as a compass rather than an impossible fantasy. Just follow the signal.
So I want to leave you with a provocative question to really challenge your own version of that faded hustle vision board. What if your dream reality isn't waiting for you to be ready? What if it's waiting for you to simply walk toward it? It is time to turn up the volume on your internal signal. Find that unlocked door in your life, put your hand on the knob, and finally just step through. So ask yourself right now, what is the very first step you can take today?
Hello, and welcome to this explainer. Imagine for a second that you and I are just sitting across from each other right now, maybe in a quiet, comfortable office with a couple of cups of coffee. You know, as a career coach, I sit across from deeply talented, absolutely brilliant professionals every single day. And so often, the obstacle between where they are and where they really want to be, well, it isn't a lack of skill, and it certainly isn't a lack of desire. It's actually something much quieter. So today, we're going to look really closely at the true cost of hesitation and what it genuinely means to choose action over safety.
I want you to hear this entire explainer as an open letter written directly to you, especially if you're a mid-career professional who's been eyeing a major change, maybe a totally new industry, starting your own business, or finally writing that book, but you just find yourself completely paralyzed. You're literally standing still on the edge of your own potential, refusing to walk in. Listen, you are absolutely not alone in this, but we do need to understand exactly what is keeping your feet glued to the floor. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever heard of the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion? There's this character named Shinji Ikari who just perfectly captures this exact feeling. Shinji faces one of the most painful character arcs in animation, and it's not because of the literal giant monsters he has to fight, but because of the battle happening entirely inside of his own head. He's told he is the only one who can pilot this mech. The fate of people he loves depends on it. The evidence of his ability is right there in front of him. And what does he do? He runs. Again and again. And it's not because he's a coward in the traditional sense, but because the terror of trying and being found insufficient is far, far greater to him than the cost of not trying at all.
Now think about it. This is the exact mental math happening in your head right now. On one side, you've got the pain of trying and failing. On the other side, the pain of not knowing. Shinji would rather live in the pain of not knowing what he could have been than risk discovering that he tried with absolutely everything he had and it still just wasn't enough. Does that sound a little too familiar? Because that is the psychological architecture of almost every dream that stays a dream. This isn't laziness, guys. This is protection. Your mind is using the strange, kind of broken wisdom. If you never fully try, you can never fully fail. And if you never fail, you can always preserve that little hope of someday.
But here's the thing. Someday is the most comfortable prison in the world. Think about it. It has no bars, it has no guards, it has no locks. You can literally leave whenever you choose. And that is exactly why most people never, ever do. We just wrap ourselves in this cozy blanket of someday to avoid the sharp edges of reality. But eventually, as Shinji painfully learned at the cost of everything he thought was safe, that protection, it's a complete illusion.
And this brilliantly illustrates why that illusion is so dangerous. Because a genuine attempt that falls short actually gives you something. It gives you vital information. It gives you growth. It points you in a totally new direction. But most importantly, it gives you undeniable proof that you can actually survive the fall. Standing still? Well, standing still gives you absolutely nothing, except years. Years that become the most expensive currency you'll ever spend on the illusion of safety.
All right, let's move into part 1, the Master's Courtyard.
To really grasp this illusion of comfort, I want you to imagine an ancient monastery. In the morning light, a young student is standing in a courtyard facing two identical wooden doors set into a heavy stone wall. The master comes up and tells the student, behind one of these doors is everything you've ever hoped for. Behind the other is everything you fear most. I won't tell you which is which, and I'm not going to help you choose. But both doors are real, both are accessible, and both will remain right here every single morning for the rest of your life. The master goes on to explain that most people spend their entire lives just standing right there in the courtyard. They study the doors. They wait for a sign. They are absolutely certain that certainty will eventually arrive. But spoiler alert, it never does. Because certainty is only earned by actually walking through one of the doors. Now, when the student inevitably asks, but what if I choose the wrong one? The master just smiles with this hint of sadness and says, the wrong door teaches you exactly what the right door requires. No student who walked through either door ever wasted a single step. The only true loss, the actual tragedy here, belongs to the students who just stood in the courtyard until their legs gave out. They lost time, literally the one thing that can never be recovered.
Listen, this story is not just a metaphor. You are standing in the courtyard right now. So I have to ask, where is your courtyard? What are your two doors? Think about that career transition you've been putting off, or maybe that unspoken ambition you kind of hide from your friends. You've been studying those doors for months, maybe even years, asking other people for the answer to a question that only your own feet can answer. The courtyard is not a place of safety, it's actually the most dangerous place there is, because while you wait for a sign, time is passing you by.
Let's transition to part 2, the slow erosion.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is what happens if you choose to stay in the courtyard. It results in this really quiet tragedy. You see, dreams don't usually die dramatically. There's rarely a massive explosion or a sudden, clear moment of total failure. It's never really that clean or honest. Instead, a waiting dream just gets smaller, quietly, imperceptibly. It is exactly like a flickering flame that you slowly, casually starve of oxygen without ever making the conscious decision to put it out.
Let's look at how this breaks down over time. In year 1 of postponing your dream, it's still super vivid. You can see the exact life in your mind, the specific details of doing the work you are meant to do. But by year 2, those details start to soften. A quiet doubt kind of becomes your new companion. In year 3, you start negotiating with reality. You tell yourself, well, maybe not that exact vision, maybe something adjacent, something practical, something that just won't hurt quite as much if it goes wrong. And by year 4, man, some people can no longer even remember what they originally wanted in the first place. Those small, totally reasonable compromises have completely extinguished the original fire. And that slow erosion leaves you in year 4, standing in a reality that is, comfortable enough. It's passable. It's survivable. You've got a decent salary, a really safe routine. But something inside of you is screaming in a language you just no longer know how to translate. You start to feel this low, wordless, persistent discomfort every single time you drive to work or sit down at your desk. So, the crucial point is this. I need you to hear this loud and clear. That screaming, it is not depression. It is not ingratitude for the genuinely good things in your life. And it is absolutely not a personality flaw. It is your original dream. It is still alive, buried way down under years of reasonable compromises, and it is protesting your choice to prioritize comfort over the specific, terrifying joy of actually trying. A dream doesn't die because the world is too hard. It dies because the dreamer just stops choosing it.
Which brings us to part 3, recovering your dream.
Look, I know this is incredibly heavy, and I'm really not telling you this to make you feel guilty. Fear is a deeply, deeply human thing. But devastation, when it actually comes from the truth, is a doorway. If hearing about the slow erosion of your dreams hurts right now, that pain is incredibly useful. It's a catalyst. It's the truth finally snapping you awake so you can stage a prison break from that comfortable cell of someday. Because here is the absolute best news you are going to hear all day. As a coach, I've seen clients make this exact realization time and time again. Right now, today, you are still on the side of the door where the dream is totally recoverable. The fire might be burning pretty low, but it is still burning. That specific, original, uncompromised version of the life and the career you actually want is still accessible to you. Now, is it easily accessible? No, not without serious effort and real risk, but it is genuinely actually accessible. That won't always be true. The clock is definitely ticking in the courtyard, but it is true today.
Which leaves us with one final, really important thought to ponder. The doors are still there. They're going to be there tomorrow morning.
The question is no longer which door is right, because like we talked about, there are literally no wasted steps once you move. The only real question is, how much longer will you stand in the cold, waiting for a sign when the only correct move is motion itself? I think it's time to open the door. Thanks so much for joining me on this Explainer. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into something I like to call the architecture of beginning. We are going to figure out how to finally, and I mean finally, move beyond just waiting around.
I want you to think of me as your mentor today. I'm sitting right across from you, and I'm going to be unflinchingly honest, because you're here for something real. So let's kick things off with a pretty uncomfortable question. What exactly are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the absolute perfect moment? You know, a magical burst of uninterrupted free time? Or maybe a solid guarantee that you just won't fail? We love to tell ourselves that we just need a little more preparation. But if we're being completely honest with ourselves, that is rarely the whole truth, is it?
To really wrap our heads around this hesitation, let's look at a story from our source material about a woman named Rhea. After 2 whole years of just blatantly ignoring her own vision board, she finally sat down and really looked at it, and she had this realization. She used to have this absolute certainty that she could actually achieve her dreams. But she didn't just lose that certainty overnight. No, instead, she traded it away, slowly, to everyone who looked at her a bit skeptical, to every substitute goal she picked up just because it felt easier. She made like 100 small voluntary transactions, trading her certainty away just to secure that fleeting feeling of being safe. And honestly, who among us hasn't done exactly that?
Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is the science behind why we make that terrible trade. You might feel a lot of guilt for holding yourself back, but seriously, you shouldn't. It's not a character flaw. It is ancient, deeply wired biology. See, our brains are not actually designed to pursue happiness. They're designed to pursue safety. And to your brain, safety just means the known, even if that known is familiar misery. We will biologically choose a life that makes us absolutely miserable over risky growth any day of the week, because joy actually requires venturing into the unfamiliar. And to a survival-wired brain, the unfamiliar is literally a threat.
So the absolutely crucial move here is breaking this biological loop, because every single time you postpone your dream for a little bit of comfort, your brain logs it as evidence that the dream is dangerous. The longer you wait, the louder that internal alarm gets. This brings us back to a massive pivotal realization Rhea had when she finally took that vision board off the wall. She just said out loud, "I am done pretending that waiting is the same as preparing." Just let that sink in for a second. Waiting does not make beginning any easier. It actually makes it harder. Postponing your dream is just this massive illusion of preparation.
The solution isn't to just sit there and wait until that biological alarm goes quiet, because it doesn't work that way. That alarm goes quiet in exactly one way, by walking straight toward the very thing it's warning you about. When you actually walk toward it, you discover that, hey, the door was never locked in the first place. The water wasn't nearly as cold as it looked. You don't become ready and then go. You become ready by going, not a single solitary second before. Actually beginning is the prerequisite for readiness. And this brings us to a massive perspective shift we all need to make. Let's look at the difference between our perception of a dream and its actual reality. We tend to view our dream life as this grand final destination, right? A book deal, a bustling design studio, a finished masterpiece. But because that result is so far away, it feels utterly impossible to reach. But the reality? Your dream life is not a destination. It's the specific, kind of unglamorous, daily joy of simply doing the work. For a writer, it's the private pleasure of finding the exact right word. For a designer, it's just sitting with a blank space. That daily joy, that is available to you right now, today. All right, so let's translate this into something highly actionable. If you are finally ready to stop watching the doors and start walking through them, here is your practical blueprint. We call it the 6-step identity migration. It's basically a system to walk from your current reality straight toward the person who inhabits your dream reality, starting this very minute. Let's break down exactly how to do this, step by step.
Step 1 is all about establishing a present tense identity. You need to write down your dream in the first person present tense today. Don't write, "I really want to be a designer." No, you write, "I am a designer who works every day on craft." The human brain actually cannot distinguish between a vivid, emotionally real present tense statement and a current fact. You are literally installing a new self-image before the external evidence even arrives. It's kind of like pouring a rock-solid foundation before the building itself is even visible.
Okay, moving to step 2. This is all about unglamorous action. I want you to completely remove the pressure to be perfect right now. Your only goal is to do just one specific, achievable, totally unglamorous thing today. Fill one single page in a sketchbook, write 3 completely unpolished, messy paragraphs, or just read one chapter of a book without your phone in the room. The goal here is absolutely not quality. The goal is just to generate one day's worth of evidence that you exist as this new identity. You're just proving to yourself that you are someone who moves.
Step 3 requires a little bit of honest introspection. You need to name your avoidance. Look, we all procrastinate, but what is your specific pattern? Do you suddenly need to reorganize your entire desk before you start typing? Do you magically pick up your phone the exact moment a task gets hard? Give that specific behavior a name. Call it the false preparation or the disappearing act. By specifically identifying and naming it, you create this tiny fraction of a second of awareness before you automatically self-sabotage. And believe me, your entire dream life lives in that tiny fraction of a second.
Step 4 is building what we call your minimum viable environment. Because let's face it, your environment dictates your behavior. If you have to fight your own environment just to begin your work, you are rarely going to begin. You need to design your physical space so that your new positive habits are practically unavoidable. Leave your sketchbook open on your desk the night before. Put your running shoes right by the front door, not tucked away in some closet. Move your phone into a completely different room. You want to make the cues for doing the work blindingly obvious and basically bury the cues for avoiding it.
All right, step 5 is incredibly simple, but arguably the most powerful of all. Track the days. Specifically, we're aiming for 30 days. I want you to get a physical paper calendar, not an app on your phone, a real piece of paper. And every single day that you do your one unglamorous task, you mark a giant X on that calendar. Why 30? Because after 30 days, you achieve something that no motivational video could ever give you. You get unambiguous, undeniable proof. You literally have 30 pieces of hard evidence that you are not the person your fear told you you were.
When you're tracking these days, your only psychological job in the whole world is to protect the chain. Just mark the X. You do not need to produce a masterpiece today. You don't need some massive, earth-shattering creative breakthrough. You just need to mark that X. By doing this, you are effectively replacing abstract, flimsy hope with real, undeniable evidence that you are someone who consistently shows up, even when it's hard, even when the results are terrible. That chain of X's, that is the absolute foundation of genuine self-belief.
And finally, we have step 6, study for information, not comparison. Find someone out there who is already living a version of your dream reality and study how they actually began. Please do not compare your messy beginning to their polished middle. Study them just to gather information. What did their very first month look like? What did they do when things completely flopped? You do this to remind yourself that the unglamorous road from where you are to where they are is a road that is walkable by an actual human being. It's not about seeking motivation, it's just gathering factual information.
As you embark on this 6-step migration, I really need you to remember this quote. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is crossed in 1,000 small, ordinary, barely noticed steps taken in the same direction. These steps are going to feel small. They are going to feel incredibly ordinary. And you know what? That is exactly how a dream reality is built. It is never some dramatic, cinematic leap. It's just the quiet, daily accumulation of showing up.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question. That morning where you finally look up and realize you've actually arrived in your dream reality, that morning is real. It comes for everyone who walks consistently enough. So the only question that remains is this. Will you actually begin today, or will you stand in the courtyard a little bit longer just watching the doors? The choice, as always, is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I seriously challenge you, go mark your first X today.